Action. I'll tell you a little about Karen. Her name is Karen Jaroch. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Anyhow, she is a University of South Florida graduate and licensed professional engineer who, after taking time off to raise her 4 children, found herself drawn to politics in 2009. She managed a volunteer center during the 2012 presidential election cycle and chaired a local PAC fighting a county sales tax hike. In 2013, she took a position representing Florida for Heritage Action, the advocacy arm of the Heritage Foundation, where she's been ever since. And she's come all the way from Tampa. So let's give her a warm welcome. Karen?
Thank you, and I'd love to take credit for tonight's attendance, but I have an idea. You all are doing a wonderful job. I hear that this county is now red, so congratulations. So I don't know how long it's been. I'm from Tampa in Hillsborough County, and unfortunately we went from red to blue in the last 3 presidential cycles. So we've got our work cut out, and you guys are an excellent example for us. So as Barbara said, I'm with Heritage Action. We are the advocacy arm of the Heritage Foundation. How many here know what the Heritage Foundation is? Have ever heard of it? Okay, most of you, but probably about a third haven't. The Heritage Foundation's been around since the mid-70s. They were a conservative think tank that got started, in the late 70s, and if I'll take you back to that time, we had President Carter, we had really horrible inflation, and the economy was very stagnant, and there really wasn't any conservative ideas being brought through in our policy prescriptions until Reagan came along. And of course, you all know he was elected in 1980, and he was a kind of a newcomer, even though he was a governor in California. On the national scene, he was kind of new. So Heritage had embarked in the prior couple of years to write up these policy prescriptions in some of the different areas of the federal government, like transportation and energy and environment, and all the different cabinet level positions, and Star Wars, and several recommendations in that policy book. And when Reagan came into office, and before he was actually inaugurated, Heritage Foundation had presented him with this binder full of papers. And he read it and loved it, made copies, and he presented it to all his cabinet level staffers or secretaries during his first cabinet level meeting. And over the course of 4 years, I'm set to either put into place or to initiate 2/3 of those policies. And of course, he won with a landslide of even more states in '84. And I'm not trying to say that it was anything due to the Heritage Foundation, but what it does show is that when you govern conservatively, you win. The country turned around and everything was much better. So let me tell you, bring that fast forward to the future. Heritage still continues to create these books, and actually those papers were bound into a hardcover. I actually got a copy on Amazon, and it's called A Mandate for Leadership. And every 4 years they update that. And so the policy prescriptions that we had done in 2015 for the 2016 president, we had 334 policy prescriptions. And I'm here to report that 64% of those policy prescriptions have been enacted or initiated by President Trump in just 1 year. So he's done an excellent job. Who would have guessed that he would have been one of the most conservative presidents in our time? So that's really good. So I'm here to give you a report from DC. So we have a bunch of experts up in DC. Our infrastructure's up there, so we delve mostly, or I should say totally, in federal policy. So we don't do state or county government level, but a lot of those, taxation and those principles are timeless and can really go anywhere. But we are definitely conservatives. You've heard of the conservative stool. We have all 3 legs. We are social conservatives, fiscal conservatives, and we believe in a strong national defense, which includes a strong border wall. So unfortunately, we've got a lot of work there to do. But as you all know, after the 2016 elections, we lost the House to the Democrats. And Nancy Pelosi didn't take very long to consolidate her power. And one of the first things she did, she had a little breakout with AOC, and she has like a freshman Democrat problem. They weren't kind of in line. But she eventually got through a new rules package in the House. As you know, the Constitution allows the House to set its own rules in the Senate. And since the House incorporates every 2 years, because everyone's up for election, they typically vote on their rules. In the Senate, it's a continuous body, meaning it never really totally dissolves, so those rules are harder to change. But what she did, a couple things. There used to be something called vacate the chair, and that was a process where any member of the House, Democrat or Republican, could actually put forward a motion to say, we want to vote on the speaker. And that threat actually is one of the reasons why John Boehner actually stepped down and resigned when he did, because a guy named Mark Meadows had done that when he got frustrated with things that are going on. Well, Nancy Pelosi shored up her power by changing that rule, so she doesn't have this threat of these freshmen anymore. Because remember, any of them who were challenging her and early on could have made this motion. Another thing that they did was they changed the way you score fiscal projects. Now, the Congressional Budget Office will score a bill, both a static scoring and a dynamic scoring. Static kind of gives you, okay, what's the total amount? But dynamic is actually kind of in time and how everything is like a cash flow, and it really does a more in-depth policy. Well, what the Democrats did is they got rid of this dynamic scoring. So they only do static scoring, which is really horrible because they coupled that by removing the vote that the House used to have to take whenever they wanted to raise the debt ceiling. So we've actually got a terrible position now where we don't have the right analysis of some of these bills, and when they start proposing the Green New Deal that's going to take $81 trillion and there's no debt ceiling, I mean, there really is some things that we really need to watch out for. So, they've really gone in and changed a lot of things, and so it's very imperative in 2020 that we take away control of the Democrats. And from a conservative, I'm not advocating Republican or Democrat here. I need to keep our tax status, but we do align very much with conservative policy is typically mirrors Republican policy. One of the bills, I'm going to tell you about a couple of the bills that we're working on right now. We did a lot of work on the border wall. We did a lot of work on another one of Nancy Pelosi's priorities, which was H.R. 1. And they were basically trying to federalize the election process and take away the state of Florida's ability to do redistricting, and it did pass the House. Thankfully, we do have a firewall in the Senate. But there is a bill that they brought forward this week called H.R. 5, and it is called the Equality Act. And as you can guess, it's probably anything but equality. What they are doing would be to make sexual orientation and gender identity, they would amend the 1964 Civil Rights Act and make that a protected class. The problem with that, gender identity is changeable, and they are actually adding in some criminal penalties if you don't agree with someone's preferred pronoun. And I'm just going to give you a rundown of what that bill does. They're going to be having a vote on this in a couple of weeks. So I think Yoho is your congressman, he'll be fine. But it wouldn't hurt to just shore him up. He gets a lot of pressure from Indivisible and the left, and just tell him, hey, you're voting no on H.R. 5, right? Yeah. So this is, I'll just give you a rundown of what this does. And by the way, when somebody who is a boy feels like maybe they identify with a girl, there's a term for that, it's called gender dysphoria. And 98% of the boys and 88% of the girls will naturally grow out of this condition if left alone. But what this bill does is it would actually, you could, as a parent, if you had a child and maybe they get some, are told some things in school and they're having these issues in their, in their mind, they're just kind of confused, well, they could seek hormone treatment, puberty blockers when they're 11 years old. That's kind of one of the things that this bill would do. And if you didn't agree to that, you could possibly be accused of child abuse. They would allow, let me see where my notes are, at 11 years old. At 16, you would get sex hormones. In other words, if you're a girl, think you're a boy, you would get testosterone to grow hair, beards, facial hair, that kind of stuff. And then when you're 18, it would make them eligible for sex reassignment surgery. And again, 98% of the boys are going to naturally grow out of this. So when you're taking someone at 11 and you're carrying them on, this is a priority bill of the Democrats. The other thing it would do, it would penalize anyone who doesn't affirm this new normal of these SOGI laws. There was a teacher who was fired in Virginia for refusing to call, someone that preferred a certain pronoun. He called her a her instead of whatever her preferred pronoun was, and he got fired. And so what this bill will do will penalize teachers, adoption agencies, food pantries, any organization, homeless shelters that may hold a traditional view of marriage or of gender. And this is not fair. I mean, they're all for equality, but think about the woman who earned a scholarship and she's going to college on a scholarship, competing as a woman. She's a biological woman, but then you get this male who identifies as a female now, taking away her college scholarships and taking away her opportunities. It could also coerce medical professionals the same way we talked about parents. If they refuse to do this, they could be accused of discrimination, because now this is, like I said, in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Parents could actually lose their custody, be accused of child abuse. And then, think about the bathroom policies. It really could enable sexual assault when you have these men going into women's bathrooms. You're basically creating a national bathroom policy with this bill. But this is where the left is going. So in a way, I don't know. I don't think half the Democrats could even go along with them on that. But it is a bill, H.R. 5, it's called the Equality Act, and this would be one of the bills that we would encourage our volunteers to, people who get our email list, to call on their members of Congress and urge them to vote against H.R. 5. Another one that we're doing a little bit of work on is called the Born Alive Abortion Protection Survivors Act. And even though there is the name of abortion in that, it's really not about abortion. It's about saving born alive babies from botched abortions. Abortion means you're terminating a pregnancy early. Well, when a baby is born, there's no longer an abortion. You have a live baby on the table. And what you're seeing in a lot of these state legislatures like New York, and we saw recently in Virginia, they're very afraid that the Supreme Court that Trump is, selecting may overturn Roe v. Wade. So that's why you're seeing a lot of states making these very outlandish new rules. In New York, what they did is they loosened the late-term abortion restrictions. And of course, we all heard on tape the Virginia governor talking about, well, if the baby's born, we'll make him comfortable, we'll go off in the room and determine, should we commit infanticide or not? So this bill that we are advocating for is H.R. 962, and it's the Born Alive bill. And all it would say is, it would not penalize the mother. It would basically say, hey, if you're a medical professional, you have to render aid just like you would, your Hippocratic oath, which is what most doctors, have subscribed to. It would just require that these babies be given medical care. Just like a baby, we don't think they should be treated differently because they were born in an abortion clinic rather than in a delivery room. So it's a real simple bill. But guess what? Nancy Pelosi will not bring that bill to the floor. She has the power. Remember I said she kind of shored up all this power. In the House, the magic number is 218. We have 435 House numbers. Half plus one is 218. There are only 197, I believe, Republicans. So we don't have enough to kind of force a vote. And the mechanism that the minority can use to bring a bill that the speaker overrules, it's a process called the discharge petition. So if you can get 218 members of Congress to sign on to this discharge petition, it takes this bill that would have been bottled up and it forces it to the floor for a vote. It becomes a privileged motion. So that's another thing that we're advocating. We're advocating that 218 members of Congress sign on to this discharge petition so then we can have a vote. And that's going to come into play very seriously in 2020 because a recent poll said 77% of all Americans would favor this Born Alive bill. 50% of Democrats do. And even people who are otherwise pro-abortion, they recognize, the inhumanity of this act. So in order to do that, we're going to need Democrats to cross over. And so we've been advocating, the petition became quote unquote live last Tuesday, and we did a fly-in. We had some of we call them Sentinels, fly in to DC, and we visited 38 Democrats that we've targeted. Now the reason Nancy does not want this to come to the House floor is she has about 40 Democrats in swing districts who she doesn't want to have to put on record on this bill. I told you 77% of the Americans would be for this bill. So if every Republican except for one is in the country is on this bill, and that happens to be Francis Rooney, who is out. He's a Florida congressman, but he's actually out on knee surgery, and he has said he will sign it as soon as he gets back to Washington. But we have had so far 3 Democrats cross over. I think one in Pennsylvania, one in Texas, and I think Indiana. So we need about 21 more Democrats. I would love to get Al Lawson on. I would love to get Charlie Crist. He's in a swing district in my area. I would love to get a Stephanie Murphy, who's in a swing district in the Orlando area. So we've been collecting postcards from constituents, and we actually hand-delivered stacks of them last week to their offices. So so these are the kinds of policy issues. It seems like we're doing a lot of social conservatism, but we do wall funding, we do financial advocacy, for controlling our spending. But we have a program called the Sentinel Program. I mentioned that we have people that track with us and they sign up to get our emails. We do a weekly conference call on Mondays where we have our team up in DC. We have a building catty-corner from the Capitol, and we have the 4th floor is where Heritage Action is based, of the Heritage Building. And so we have a team of lobbyists up there that are lobbying for taxpayers. We actually, when they fill out the lobbyist form, it's for the American taxpayer. But we have citizen lobbyists called Sentinels in the district. And so it's my role to talk to people about some of the bills that we're following. And if there's anyone in the audience that says, hey, I'd really like to get the inside baseball on these types of bills, and I'd like to help advocate at the federal level and work with us. If that might be you, if there's anyone in the room now that might have those thoughts, I have a form over in the back table there, and you can just give me your email and your phone number, and I can sign you up for that. We do probably 1 to 2 emails a week, and then we have a conference call from 5:30 to 6 on Mondays, and then we also have other events. We had done national summits in the past. We're probably going to do a regional one in October where we have folks from all over the South get together. I had an event in St. Petersburg. We bought out the theater of the Unplanned showing. That's where I got a lot of these postcards that I was talking about before. So anyhow, that's pretty much what I do and what Heritage Action does. And I think, if there's anyone here interested in advocating with us, I welcome you to join us. I've got information packets as well in the back. But I would like to, if I have any time left, if there's any questions that you might have on any federal policy that we might deal with, whether it be wall funding, whether it be any of the social issues that I talked to. If you have any questions about the Green New Deal, can't say that without laughing. I'd love to help answer. Yes, sir.
The Democrats use health care as a big proponent of their package, of their effort in the 2016 election. Does Heritage have a report that refutes all the, what you hear the Democrats saying is how great the Canadian healthcare system is, how great the European healthcare system is?
Right.
Do you have something that refutes that gives us actual statistics and?
Yeah, so he's asking about the Democrats ran on, I guess, Medicare for all and some of the socialized medicine. I mean, really, a lot of the tenets of Obamacare was socialized medicine because of the requirements. It took away some of the private markets. You know, you had to conform to these requirements that were mandated by the feds. But yes, we do have reports that talk about the cost. The Medicare for all, I can't remember how many trillions of dollars 32. It was. 32, thank you, $32 trillion. We do have reports. Heritage has, their website is heritage.org. And if you've ever on social media probably seen any of the articles from the Daily Signal, a lot of times we take those very technical papers and they put it in a format that you can share on social media. And it's from our conservative news outlet called the Daily Signal. But we also have convened a working group of what to do with healthcare if indeed we were to repeal it. And so they've been working for about a year and we have a framework, and it's based a little bit on the Senate plan that it was called the Graham-Cassidy plan. And essentially, if you know, there's several elements of it, but the bottom line would be it would just take the funding and grant it back to the states and get rid of the federal control and let the states regulate it like they used to do prior to Obamacare. So yeah, we have a lot of the research that can refute you know, the cost of socialized healthcare and why it's bad. And then we've also are trying to offer solutions in the event that the Republicans take back Congress and they need to have a plan. We have a framework that they can take and hopefully it'll improve in our current situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
The Heritage Foundation are doing anything with the fake news broadcast people, like CNN and that, to change the narrative and work on that?
Yeah, I think that is exactly what the purpose of the Daily Signal was. It's been around for about 5 years. I know fake news has been around for more than that. But it really didn't have that fun name until I think Trump coined it. But yeah, the Daily Signal is one avenue. They do a lot at Heritage. They have a lot of events. If you're ever up in DC, look at our website before you go up, because probably 3 or 4 days out of the week, they have a lunchtime seminar series. And you could go and, you know, the Heritage Building is a wonderful building to see if you haven't seen it before. And you can actually, the newsmakers are there. You know, they'll have, I think we had Senator Mike Lee come and talk. We've had different, you know, experts on energy. You know, sometimes you have to be a nerd. I'm a nerd in transportation policy. You know, so I get excited about that. But actually, when I was there last week, they had one about capitalism versus socialism. And I haven't had a chance to watch the video of that, but if you go there, you can see, actually, we have stored videos of those talks. But it's kind of fun sometimes. If you ever find yourself up in DC, we'd love to have you join us then as well. So, anything else? Yes, ma'am?
I keep hearing that Medicare and Medicaid is all the same thing. They want to give Medicare to people that have work. That upsets me. I paid for decades into that. That is not a government handout. That's my money.
Right.
Is there anyone going to put a stop to that?
Right. Well, so there's Medicaid and there's Medicare. And the Medicare is exactly what you said. You pay every paycheck, you pay into that system. And they're basically touting a Medicare for all system that would give it to everybody. It's just unsustainable. That's why we believe that, you know, 32 trillion, that's all you have to say. I mean, it's unfathomable. You know, you add that and the Green New Deal and everything else, and there's just no way we could sustain ourselves as a country if we continue with that. But I mean, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, they are basically promising kind of a socialistic system. You know, they also in the Green New Deal are promising everybody a good paying job. I mean, that's not the role of government. I mean, that is against our capitalistic free market system. So anyhow, well, I thank you all very, oh, yes ma'am.
Is your organization working with any of the high school and college areas to combat the socialist, the liberal policies that they're spouting?
Yeah, so she's asking about do we do any work with the college-age kids to combat what they're learning in the schools? We do have some really good speakers, some young speakers, David Azarad and Ryan Anderson, who they love going into the schools and talking. But one of the things that Heritage has done actually for probably since they existed is they have a very big intern program where they have 3 sets of internships every year, and they take in probably 50 to 75 college-age kids every year. And and it's not just government policy. We might have someone that talks about marketing. They could work in the marketing department at Heritage, or they could work in the communications and learn how to do movies or videos. They could work in policy. They could intern at Heritage Action, where we do more of the advocacy work. So there's many areas. Heritage puts on wonderful events. So some folks like to go to our events. So when they do come and intern for about 3.5 months, they actually go through a constitutional program. We try and educate them or re-educate them in the case of some of these college students and what they're hearing. But yeah, the problem with the universities is horrific. What they're taking these kids, people are sending their kids to college and spending good money so that they can have an education and make a decent living. And what we're seeing are kids coming out of these schools with debt and no job skills. So we do advocate a lot. The HERO Act is Higher Education Reform and Opportunity Act, and that would kind of go after this accreditation cartel. And maybe make the schools a little bit more accountable to the types of education that they're giving their children, and dissolving some of these loan programs that the Obama administration actually federalized when he got in there, which caused tuition to spike. So, but yeah, the kids, it's hard to combat that because they're taught from cradle to grave in our educational system, and we've got to get a hold of that. We've got to teach them the founding principles of our country and make them understand, so that's why capitalism versus socialism. It used to be taught when I went to school here years ago, and it's been taken out of the curriculum. So we do need to work a lot on the kids. So, great question. So, thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.